The blizzard should have killed him. But Eleanor Hayes, a Boston schoolteacher who'd been in Montana exactly 47 days, tied a rope around her waist and walked into the whiteout anyway. She wasn't supposed to fall in love with him. That wasn't the arrangement. Drop a comment with where you're watching from. I read everyone. 3 months ago, Eleanor had taught grammar to proper Boston children. Tonight, she was hunting for her husband in a Montana storm, a man she'd known for 6 weeks. The rope bit into her waist as wind screamed down from the mountains. Duke, the cattle dog, pressed against her leg. Through the white wall of snow, she could barely see her own hands. Thomas. Her voice vanished into the void. This was madness. Rose knew it. The 9-year-old had grabbed her arm with tears streaming. You'll die too, just like Ma. But Eleanor had looked at that terrified child and felt something crack open in her chest. Not duty. Not obligation. Love. For Rose. And for the stubborn rancher who'd been gone since morning. Eleanor pressed her palm against the frosted stagecoach window, watching Montana territory stretch endlessly before her. In her reticule, a crumpled advertisement. Widower, rancher, Montana territory, seeks educated woman for marriage and care of young daughter. Must be of good character. Good character. The words tasted like ash. Mr. Whitmore's hands on her shoulders. His breath hot against her neck. Be reasonable, Miss Hayes. A woman in your position should be grateful. She'd refused. He'd ensured no respectable school would ever hire her again. Whispers followed her like smoke. Improper conduct, questionable morals, unfit for young minds. So here she was. 2 carpet bags and a teaching certificate that meant nothing out here. The stage pulled into Copper Creek as the sun bled behind the mountains. 1 Main Street. Weathered buildings. A man stood near the general store, tall, broad-shouldered, hat pulled low. Miss Hayes. His voice was rough. Unused to conversation. Thomas Callahan's blue eyes studied her like she was a puzzle with missing pieces. Younger than she'd expected, perhaps 32. Dark hair. Jawline that suggested both strength and stubbornness. A deep scar ran from his temple into his hairline. This all of it. He gestured to her bags. Everything I need. Something flickered in his expression. He loaded her belongings without ceremony. Hour to the ranch. We'll need to move if we want to beat full darkness. They rode in silence, close enough that she could smell leather and wood smoke and something earthy she couldn't name. Your letter mentioned a daughter. Rose. She's 9. His jaw tightened. Lost her mother 2 years back. Can you cook? Handle stock? I can learn. Learning takes time. Winter's hard out here. Eleanor straightened her spine. Mr. Callahan, I didn't travel 1,500 miles to be frightened by honest work. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. We'll see. The Callahan ranch appeared as they crested a ridge. Sturdy pine house, smoke curling from 2 chimneys. Beyond stretched snow-covered pastures bordered by dark forests. Mountains rose like guardians against the darkening sky. A small figure burst from the house, a girl in a blue dress, dark braids flying. She stopped short when she saw Eleanor, her expression closing like a door. Rose, this is Miss Hayes. She's come to help us. I don't need help. Rose's voice was steady, chin lifted. She had her father's eyes. The same stubborn mouth. Rose. Inside. Now. The girl spun and ran. Thomas stood motionless, shoulders rigid. She'll come around. Mr. Callahan, perhaps we should discuss the arrangements. You're here, aren't you? He picked up her bags. That's enough of an arrangement. Inside, the main room was spacious but sparse. Rose sat at the table, arms crossed, radiating hostility. I'll show you the spare room. We'll go into town Thursday for the ceremony. Thursday? That's 3 days. Time doesn't change what needs doing. This ranch requires 2 adults. Rose needs a woman's influence. And you need a home. We made an agreement. He wasn't wrong. But the bluntness stung. Very well. Thursday. That first night, Eleanor lay in the narrow bed, listening to Rose cry softly through the thin walls. The sound cut through her like a blade. The next morning, she woke to find the house empty. Through the window, Thomas and Rose fed stock in the pre-dawn darkness. Eleanor quickly dressed and explored the kitchen, reasonably equipped but showing masculine neglect. She set to work. By the time they returned, coffee was boiling, bacon frying, biscuits in the oven. Thomas stopped in the doorway, surprise evident. "Thought you couldn't cook." "I said I could learn. I didn't say I couldn't cook." They ate in awkward silence. But Rose took second helpings of bacon. A third biscuit with jam. When Thomas finally spoke, his words surprised her. "If you're willing, I could use help with the books. Ranch accounts. They're not in good order." An offering. An acknowledgement that she might have value beyond cooking. "I'd be happy to help." The ranch office was cluttered with papers and ledgers. Within an hour, Eleanor identified the problem. "You're selling to Miller every season. But Thompson consistently pays 20% more per head." Thomas leaned over her shoulder to examine the ledger. Eleanor became acutely aware of his proximity, the warmth radiating from his body, the rough texture of his work shirt, the faint scent of pine and horses. Her pulse quickened. "Miller's been buying from us for years. Loyalty is admirable. But you're sacrificing hundreds of dollars annually." She tapped the figures. "With Rose growing, with winter expenses, wouldn't that money be useful?" Thomas straightened, studying her with that intense look. "You're right. There's more. You're not accounting for seasonal feed costs properly. You figured all that out in an hour?" "Numbers make sense to me. Always have." Something shifted in his expression. Warmth that hadn't been there before. "You're full of surprises, Miss Hayes." "Eleanor. If we're to be married, you should call me Eleanor." "Eleanor." The way he said her name slow, deliberate, made her stomach flutter. That afternoon, Eleanor found Rose in the yard throwing sticks for Duke. "That's a good dog. What's his name?" "Duke." Rose's tone was wary. "May I try?" Eleanor threw the stick. Duke bounded after it, returning to drop it at Rose's feet, ignoring Eleanor completely. Rose's lips twitched. Almost a smile. "Rose, I'm not trying to replace your mother. No one could do that." "Then why are you here?" Eleanor considered lying. But Rose deserved honesty. "Because I needed somewhere to go, and your father needed help. Sometimes people come together because they need each other." "Did something bad happen in Boston?" "Something complicated. An important man tried to make me do things I didn't want to do. When I refused, he made sure I couldn't teach anymore. That's not fair." "No. But fairness isn't guaranteed. Sometimes you make the best choice from imperfect options." Rose threw the stick again. "Ma used to read to me every night. I have books. Different stories, adventures, mostly. Pirates and explorers. Would you like to hear one tonight?" Rose shrugged, which Eleanor took as permission. Eleanor wore her best dress, deep green wool with pearl buttons. Her hands shook as she fastened her mother's cameo. Thomas appeared in the doorway, cleaned up and wearing a dark suit. He'd shaved. Without the stubble, Eleanor could see the strong bones of his face more clearly. He was handsome. Not in a soft way, but in the rugged manner of men shaped by hard labor and harder weather. "Ready? As I'll ever be." The church was small, wind whistling through gaps in the siding. Reverend Martin was elderly, kind, efficient. Several townspeople had gathered, more curious than congratulatory. When Thomas slipped the simple gold band onto her finger, his hands were steady while hers trembled. "You may kiss your bride." Thomas hesitated, then pressed his lips to Eleanor's. Quick. Almost formal. But even that brief contact sent electricity through her body. When he pulled back, his eyes met hers. She saw the same surprise there. This attraction between them was inconvenient. Unplanned. Undeniably present. 6 weeks later. The blizzard hit on a Tuesday in late February. Winds screaming down from the mountains. Thomas had gone to check cattle that morning. Expected to return by noon. By 3 o'clock, visibility was near zero. He still hadn't appeared. Rose stood at the window, face pressed to glass. "Where is he?" "He'll be fine." He knows this land. But as darkness approached and temperature plummeted, Eleanor's fear grew. Men died in storms like this, lost and frozen mere yards from shelter. She thought of Thomas out there alone. Something fierce rose in her chest. Not just concern for Rose's sake. Genuine terror at the thought of losing him. I'm going to look for him. No. Rose grabbed her arm. You can't. You'll get lost too. I'll take Duke. Follow the fence line. If I'm not back in 2 hours, you stay inside and keep the fires going. Understand? Rose's eyes filled with tears. But she nodded. Eleanor tied a rope around her waist, attached the other end to the porch post, and set out into the storm. The wind hit like a physical blow, stealing her breath. Snow stung her face. Within minutes, she'd lost sight of the house. Only the rope kept her oriented as she pushed forward, one hand on the fence line, calling Thomas's name into the howling void. The cold was brutal. Eleanor's fingers went numb. Her face felt like frozen leather. She found him near the old line shack, collapsed against the fence. His horse stood over him protectively. Blood had frozen on his temple. His eyes were closed. Eleanor's heart stopped. Thomas. She shook him. His eyes flickered open, unfocused, but alive. Eleanor. His voice was slurred. What are you? Can you stand? We need to get you inside. Together, they managed to get him onto his horse. Eleanor walked beside them, following the rope back, praying her frozen fingers could maintain their grip. When the house finally appeared through the white curtain of snow, Eleanor wanted to weep with relief. Rose helped her get Thomas inside. They peeled off his frozen layers, revealing a deep gash on his head and a broken wrist. His core temperature was dangerously low. Get blankets, Eleanor ordered. And heat water. Quickly. She worked methodically, cleaning and bandaging the wound, immobilizing the wrist, gradually warming Thomas with blankets and hot tea. Rose hovered nearby, face white. Is he going to die like Ma? No. Eleanor said firmly. He's not. Thomas drifted in and out of consciousness through the night. Around midnight, his fever spiked. Eleanor bathed his face with cool cloths, murmuring reassurances. His eyes opened, more lucid now. You came for me. Of course I did. Could have died out there. Both of us. But we didn't. His good hand found hers, gripping tight. Margaret wouldn't have done that. I loved her, but she couldn't. He stopped. You're strong. Strong in ways I didn't know I needed. Thomas met her eyes. I don't want this to be just an arrangement anymore. I know it's not what we agreed. I know you came here running from something. But these past weeks watching you with Rose, seeing you handle the ranch. He paused. I'm falling in love with you, Eleanor. I needed to say it. In case I don't get another chance. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You frightened me tonight. I thought I'd lost you. And I realized I couldn't bear it. This wasn't supposed to happen. I came here for safety. For escape. But somewhere along the way, this became real. Thomas pulled her down beside him, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was nothing like their brief wedding peck. This kiss was deep. Hungry. Full of emotion and need. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. This complicates things, Eleanor whispered. Best complication I've ever had. By morning, Thomas's fever had broken. The doctor, summoned when the storm cleared, confirmed a concussion and badly sprained wrist. Not many women would have gone out in that storm. Rancher's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, Eleanor replied. And meant it. As Thomas healed, their relationship deepened. One evening, Rose found them standing close in the kitchen, Thomas's good hand resting on Eleanor's waist. Are you two going to be gross now? But she was smiling. Probably, Thomas admitted. Rose considered this. Ma would want Pa to be happy. And you make him smile more than he has in 2 years. Eleanor knelt beside her. Your mother will always be important to your father. She'll always be your mother. I'm not trying to replace her. But maybe there's room for something new too. Rose threw her arms around Eleanor's neck. You saved Pa. You read good stories. And you don't make me wear dresses all the time. She pulled back, eyes bright. I guess I love you too. Eleanor held her tight, tears streaming. Over Rose's head, she met Thomas's eyes and saw the same emotion reflected there. That night, after Rose was in bed, Thomas found Eleanor on the porch watching stars emerge. Cold out here. He draped a blanket around her shoulders. I'm used to it now. He stood behind her, arms coming around her waist. They fit together perfectly. Eleanor Hayes Callahan, Thomas said quietly. Sounds right. It does. When spring comes, we should expand the house. Add another bedroom. Rose is growing. And eventually. He hesitated. If you wanted more children someday. Eleanor turned in his arms, heart full. I'd like that. All of it. Really? Really. She touched his face, tracing the scar at his temple. I came to Montana running away from my past. But I found my future instead. Thomas kissed her then deep and thorough. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. But on this small ranch, two wounded people had found healing in each other. Spring came, as it always did. Snow melted. Calves were born. Colts wobbled on new legs. Eleanor stood in the doorway of their expanded house, watching Thomas and Rose work with horses. Duke lay at her feet. Her hand rested on her still flat stomach, where new life was just beginning. She'd come to Montana seeking escape, expecting nothing more than survival. Instead, she'd found love messy and complicated and real. She'd found family. Not perfect, but wholly hers. She'd found home in the last place she'd expected. Thomas caught her watching and smiled that rare, open smile that still made her heart skip. Rose waved enthusiastically. Eleanor waved back, chest tight with emotion. 3 times in one night during that terrible blizzard. Once, when she'd set out into the storm despite the danger. Once, when she'd refused to let him die. Once, when they'd finally admitted the truth to each other. 3 times she'd acted on faith and fear and desperate hope. And those 3 acts had changed everything. The Montana wind carried the scent of pine and new grass and possibility. Eleanor breathed it in and smiled. This harsh, beautiful land had tested her, shaped her, and given her more than she'd dared to dream. She was home.